Some of you might not be aware, but the LGBT community has had some infighting, especially with the LGB side and the T side of things, because, well, transgender is a different topic than orientation. When you're talking about gender identity, that's actually a different idea than orientation. And so there is a strong um, push from some LGB people to remove transgender from the LGBT community and distance themselves from us. And I just want to explain why we shouldn't do that. First of all, allies are a good thing, and separating the group and distancing like that is not a good idea because it doesn't help the cause. It just kind of excludes people, which is what the problem that LGBT people as a whole face is being excluded. Now, I've said before, and I'll say it in this video, that the similarities between transgender and then gay, lesbian, bisexual people is, I mean, there is a lot of similarities. For example, straight people and cis people don't have to come out of the closet as cis or straight. But lesbian, gay, bisexual people, transgender people all have to come out of the closet at some point. And so there's this similarity of the hostility of the world around us and having to come out of the closet, having to deal with our own internal sense of doubt, having to deal with our own internal sense of hatred, having to deal with, the world around us hating us for who we are and for things that we can't help. These are things that we all collectively have to face, whether or not you're trans or cis. If you're part of the LGBT community, you have to face this problem. And so there is this similarity, plus there's also the outside stereotyping of trans people as automatically, a trans woman is automatically just a gay man who feels guilt about being gay, for example. That's one stereotype. I could make a whole video about stereotypes and how wrong they are, but that's a future video. What I'm saying right now is that the transgender group of people belong in the LGBT community because the community is centered around that sense of the world around us denying us based off of things that we cannot help, that are based on, well, unfortunately, reproductive elements. So, being lesbian, being gay, being bisexual, being transgender, these things all affect the way that we can approach life. They affect the way that we can approach sex, the way that we can approach romance. And so it's the same category in terms of how it affects our lives. Trans people just have an additional hardship of gender. But besides that, they're very similar in terms of how they affect us. Different categories, but different in theory, similar in practice is what I would say. And so removing transgender from the LGBT community creates more animosity, creates less allies, creates less, of a fight against the problems that we face, and then it doesn't serve any purpose. I just don't think that it's a good idea to try to separate those categories, and unfortunately the only reason why people are trying to get rid of us is transphobia. People don't want, they either don't like us themselves or they don't want the movement being associated with us because the people outside of the LGBT community will use us as a scapegoat. They'll use us as like, look at how weird the trans people are. This is what LGBT is, so this is what we need to fight against. And so, yes, it might in the short term make things a little bit harder for lesbians, gay people, bisexual people. It might make it harder in the short term, but in the long term, you're dealing with a whole lot more problems by getting rid of us. And so I think that we should fight to keep trans people in the community and give us a voice, because that's pretty much the only way that we'll end up having any long-term, progress.